This is Lightning Power Lunch, presented by Reef Rum on the Lightning Audio Network with Dave Mishkin and Greg Linnelli.
It's awesome. Heddy's our captain. He's our guy. And with him away from the dressing room, his presence is missed. Obviously a really, really good player and has been a big piece of this team, in past years and this year. So to have him, just on the ice with us in the dressing room, being the great human he is, and obviously the great hockey player, it's helped a lot with the morale and everything.
There's plenty of experience that comes with Matt coming back in the lineup, and he's a calming presence in the locker room for sure, and calming presence on the ice as well. I think it's going to be really, really huge for our team to have him back in the lineup.
Mac is back. Mac is back.
Yes.
What do you make of it, partner? Mac is back.
Well, look, this is an important step. We've had a lot of questions, Greg, going back during this excellent stretch the Lightning are in, that they've been in this stretch without several of their regulars, including Hedman and McDonagh. Hedman will not return tonight, but it looks like McDonagh will. And the questions from the fan base, they've revolved around, what is this going to mean? Who's coming out of the lineup? How will the veteran players integrate back in so the Lightning don't lose a step? And that moment is now here in that one of these players is coming back. Now it's coinciding with Destu going on IR. So, again, there was no hard decision here for John Cooper to make. Max Groshev is going to be the extra defenseman, presumably. McDonagh is going to slot right in where Groshev played most of the game against Utah, which is paired with Chernak. And your other 4D, Moser Radish, Carlisle Crozier, that is set. Now, when Hedman comes back and he is nearing a return, maybe there will be a hard decision to be made. This is good news. I actually thought McDonagh's first game back was not a great game for the Lightning. It was a home game against Florida, and they lost that game. Am I remembering that right? Maybe it was the game. I think he played 3, and he played through Christmas. I'll look that up. I remember thinking his first game, maybe it was the LA game, his first game back where they lost at home, it looked like he was getting back in the groove.
Sure.
I think it was the LA game. The second game was the game where they beat Carolina, where he scored a big goal. Remember that in the third period after Carolina had gone up 4-3. And then, so those are the 3 games. Home LA, home Carolina, home St. Louis. I thought the St. Louis game, he looked like the old McDonagh. But he clearly wasn't right. We had the holiday break. We came out of the break, and he was back on IR. So he's not played in 15 games. And this is a long break again for him. So we'll see how he does coming back in. It may not click right into place in this first game, but it's an important step. So that's what I make of it. It's good news. And you got McDonagh and Chernak playing together tonight.
And that
so
was
there will
one
be
of
a lot of familiarity
right.
there.
That was one of the questions we've been taking, right? That's who's going to be playing? Who's going to be playing with who, and how many defensemen are we playing now?
Right.
When everybody gets
6.
back. And it's still 6.
Right now, for tonight, it's 6.
We don't have that problem to we don't have to worry about it too much tonight. You're right.
But Hedman participated in a full practice yesterday with a red no contact jersey, but today he was out on the ice. It was an optional, but he was in a regular jersey. And I think there's a chance he may be able to play on Sunday in the outdoor game. If it's not Sunday, I think there's no question he's going to play in the Olympics. And I think it's if it's not Sunday, it seems likely that he would get into at least one of the final 2 games the Lightning have next week before the Olympics. I mean, he kind of quipped with the media today. He's like, I haven't played in an Olympics. Somebody who's left off the Swedish team in 2014, which in retrospect
I do remember that.
A little weird. Like his profile was rising then. He wasn't quite the Hedman that he would be in 2018 when the NHL players didn't go, or in 2022 when they were supposed to go and then didn't. But he hasn't played for his country in an Olympics.
Yeah.
And he's like, this is going to be my first, and it's probably going to be my last. Because, if I'm playing for Sweden when I'm 40, Sweden has a problem, right? He said that today. So,
sure.
He understands that this is really a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for him to be able to represent his country at the Olympics. He's represented his country in other tournaments, obviously, including Four Nations. But it's a special opportunity for him, and he wants to take advantage of it. And from the Lightning's perspective, he'll get reps.
Yeah.
Like, as much as we're saying, oh, the wear and tear, and they're traveling to Italy, and they won't get a break. Like, Hedman's had a break. He's had too much of a break, I'm sure, in his mind.
Yeah.
So he'll use the Olympics as a way of kind of getting back in the swing of things.
Chris Johnston, by the way, will be joining us.
Yes.
In about 10 minutes.
Kudos to you for,
as we know.
That is your
I
hard
texted
work,
him.
my friend.
No. I said, hey, man, you want to come on? Figured the stadium series. There's going to be a lot of national media in town.
Is he coming to Tampa?
I don't know. I assume maybe he would be, but if not, this is where people want to be.
Mm-hmm.
And the Lightning are a great story. So why wouldn't you try and get one of these national guys around this time to talk about Tampa Bay? And so
I saw Joe Smith this morning, by the way.
Did you?
Minnesota is not in town.
How is Joe doing?
Yeah, I mean, we said hello. I didn't actually ask him, are you here for the outdoor game? But I presumed he's here for the outdoor game. Yeah.
Yeah, you would think. He's coming back.
Mike Zeisberger, who's up in Toronto, he's in town. I mean, it's Winnipeg, but Mike doesn't really cover. He's here for the outdoor game. Joe and Mike, both of them.
Nice.
Yeah, Steve is
telling you.
Steve gave me a thumbs up. I'm not sure if the thumbs up was for Joe, for Mike, or both. Both. Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's a big league event, so we're going to start to see some national folks filter in. Elliot Friedman was in town.
We already had a request to get him on.
Well, he was on the block party. Should I say he will be on the block?
He
was
will
on
be
the
on the
block
block
party,
right?
But he will be on the block party
That's a good
at a
get.
future date. Yes.
That's a good get.
I haven't seen Elliot, but I don't think he was here for the Monday game. He'll probably be at the game tonight. No, he left? He came in to do block party and then he left?
What a man.
And other stuff. He's like a celebrity. He's not even here to cover the game. He's just coming in to
in the hockey circles,
spread his fairy dust and
sprinkle
provide
it in.
Sprinkle it in. We're bringing in Elliot Friedman 4 or 5 days before the stadium series so he can do media, and then he's leaving.
Yeah.
He's going to Italy. Okay. He has to get ready. The stadium series is right before many people are leaving for Italy. And we can ask, Chris has been on top of this, the whole rink situation over in Italy. Sounds like they dodged a huge bullet there. The rink is going to be ready. The rink, I think, has been in use.
Does anybody have confidence in it?
The rink is the appropriate dimensions.
Wouldn't that make you hesitant if you're a GM, though? If one of your guys is going over there, not only playing potentially, but now, look, because you know how paranoid these guys get. They want to make sure everything's buttoned up.
GMs are paranoid. I mean, yes, we have GMs that are involved with their countries, like Julian, like Doug Armstrong, right? Like, they are involved with their country. But I'm sure that, especially if you're a GM unaffiliated with any of these countries, you are going to be like holding your breath during all these games because you probably have players on multiple teams.
I'm with you. But now you start getting into the ice, and it's
I think that was a concern months ago, but
that's a concern now. Believe me, that just because they've practiced on it and it looks good.
All right, you ask Chris the hard-hitting question then.
I am.
Do you have concern, Chris Johnston, as a working member of the national media, that NHL players are going to be not put in a tough situation with the playing surface?
I mean, I don't think that's a hard-hitting question. I think that's a normal question to ask.
Based on some of the hijinks that happened.
Yeah, I wouldn't feel comfortable. But that's, you're talking to somebody who has reservations about this anyway. So of course I'm going to skew that way.
Doesn't it seem like these Olympic facilities, they're always going down to the wire? I don't feel that this is the first time we've heard this about the Olympics, they have to really hustle to get this facility ready.
And it's like, how long have you had to figure this out? Like, I would want to be ahead of schedule. And that way, if we had problems, this was being corrected in 2025. Hey, this happened. let's fix it. And I would be working hand in hand with the NHL. I mean,
you do have your history with Linnelli and Sons Landscaping, which you talk about. You take care of the Linnelli yard, and you make sure it's the weeds are not out of control. The grass is not like the mower is going to win in the one-on-one battle with the grass. The grass is not going to beat your mower.
No,
you were on top of things.
It's not going to be my mower. That's right.
Unfortunately, on a larger scale, sometimes these things don't go to plan. But I do feel like we hear this a lot, where it's like they're working in the 11th hour to finish these last couple of facilities. Are they going to be ready? And then
it's like people do this in life. I mean, a lot of them are last minute.
Yeah.
That kind of happens. Just take a look at college kids. I got this prime.
And sometimes, there are things that are out of your control, like the weather. I mean, we are getting ready for the Winter Olympics. So, I mean, I don't know if there's some weather issues, not just in Italy, but, anywhere.
Here's a better question for you.
Yeah.
This is
we're burning all of our questions here before Chris joins us.
Which ice surface will be better? The one in Tampa or the one in Italy?
And you're talking about in Raymond James Stadium.
Just to play. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Which one do you feel more confident in? The one at Raymond James Stadium or the one in Italy? I think that's actually my question. That's my first question to Chris.
That's a great question.
I actually think that's a fun question.
Yeah.
Because
if Chris is listening ahead of time, he can start thinking about the answer. But the Lightning have a game tonight, we should mention, and Chris may be able to add some insight because he does cover the league writ large, and he is focused on the Canadian teams because he is based north of the border. Toronto just sucks up a lot of oxygen anyway, and Toronto has had an oxygen-sucking type of season based on how things have gone for the Leafs. But the Winnipeg Jets are one of the greatest mysteries this year in the NHL for a team that won the President's Trophy last year that was so good defensively. They were number one in the NHL defensively. Connor Hellebuck won the Vezina and the Hart. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, maybe it was a lot him. I don't know. I think their final numbers were 2.38. That was their goals allowed per game. Number one in the NHL. They lost in the second round to Dallas. They very easily could have lost in the first round. So their playoff run, take that for what it's worth. They didn't get where they wanted to get. But you figure, you're coming back. Yes, they lost Nikolai Ehlers, but, many of their main guys are back. Morrissey's back. Scheifele's back. Kyle Connor's back. Gabe Vilardi, who was a big part of their team, he's back. Alex Iafallo and Vilardi came from the Kings in a deal. I thought they played well for Winnipeg last year. They got Nemestikov. Right. Nino Niederreiter was a part of that group. Dylan Sandberg's a really good defenseman, and they got Hellebuck, right? Hellebuck missed a dozen games due to injury, but it's not like he's missed, 40 games. He's been in the net most of the year, and their goals against is over 3. They are not the same team, and they actually started 9-3. We'll go back to Winnipeg here. I just want to give you these numbers, Greg, because they are like staggering when I looked at them. So they started well. They started 9-3. Like, okay, we're picking up right where we left off last year. From November 4th, basically right after they started 9-3, to January 8th, they went 6-19-5. So that's 30 games. They played 30 games. They won 6. If you can defend, you're going to get points. If you're not defending and you're not outscoring your problems, you could go 2 months with winning 6 games. And I think 3 of them came kind of bunched together. So there was an even longer stretch there where, they couldn't get a win. I think it was close to a month. They went without an actual win during that stretch. So that's why they are where they are. They're under Hockey 500, and they have a ton of work to do to get into the playoffs. Their division is not an ideal division because the top 3 spots are going to be filled. I think Minnesota is going to, unless Minnesota goes on a hot run, maybe catches Dallas for second. But Colorado, Dallas, Minnesota, it's going to be a wild card or nothing for Winnipeg. And they got teams to jump over, and you got teams in the Pacific maybe aren't as dominant, right, as teams in the Central. But those teams in the Pacific are in, the running for the wild card, whether it's LA or San Jose or Anaheim. I mean, these teams are in the mix. Utah is in the Central, but we just talked about how good Utah has looked. So, I mean, I asked a couple of the Winnipeg guys, like, what's it going to take? And they're like, Hellebuck's just going to have to go, like, bonkers, basically. Because they just aren't defending as well as they did last year.
So I want to get to Chris here, who is waiting patiently.
Sorry. Chris, I should have just let you talk about Winnipeg.
He's coming in, but Brian Engblom, of course, and there's Chris Johnston, our good friend from The Athletic and everywhere, one of the best hockey writers we have in the game. Brian Engblom mentioned he was talking to some of the Utah personnel, and he was saying that they were telling him that Winnipeg is just slow. That's one of the big issues with them. They are just a slow team, and maybe that speaks, Mish, to what you're talking about, Chris.
Then how did they finish first defensively last year? I mean, Nikolai Ehlers is
he could fly. He could fly,
but he's one player.
And maybe
anyway, we should ask the guy who's.
Let's ask the expert.
Yeah, we'll get to Olympics and outdoor game. Explain Winnipeg to us, Chris. What the heck has gone on there this year?
Well, I think the idea is that they are older and slower. I mean, if you look around the fringes of the team, it's not just losing Ehlers. It's like they signed Gustav Nyquist, and that hasn't worked out at all. He's got 0 goals actually through 32 games. They got Jonathan Taves. They just all of a sudden the bottom fell out. You're right. I think that's probably it's inadequate to say that's all of the excuse or all of what's explanation of how you win a President's Trophy one year and now you're very close to veering into cellar territory this far out from the trade deadline. But I do know the internal view is all of a sudden they just got a little too older, a little too slower, and the game is passed some of their guys by. They're a one-line team. I think if you look at their top line actually stacks up pretty well against a lot of top lines around the league, but they have not got enough offense down their lineup to have anywhere near the success they had last season.
Chris, I think we all knew Tampa Bay, as long as they have their core together, they're always going to be competitive. But are you surprised at how well they have dealt with the adversity this year, with the injuries and the depth that it looks like they have found to really be one of the best teams in the league this year?
I would go so far as saying only the smallest handful of teams could weather those kind of injuries and somehow thrive, not just survive. And obviously Tampa's earned that level of respect, I think, around the league. They've just been a top-tier franchise for so long, been among the most competitive teams year after year after year. Great coaching staff. Obviously, Julian Brisebois and his staff do an amazing job. I mean, they're an absolute top-flight organization, and I don't think any – maybe you might say the same could happen in Vegas. They've actually had a number of injuries themselves this year and have started to come out, pretty well on the other side of it. I think the Floridas are in that conversation where I know as we're recording this, they're not currently a playoff team, but even where they are, I still think a lot of people expect them to get there. I mean, it's been amazing. And I would have to ask you guys how they've done it, because there's nothing that's obvious to me from the outside in terms of how when you're missing Hedman so long and Lilleberg and just the blue line in particular has been a disaster zone. And then obviously with Point now even being out the last couple of weeks, but they're not just surviving. They've ripped to the top of the division here in the last month or 6 weeks.
Well, I would answer it this way, Chris. I think it's more defense than offense, and they are one of the highest scoring teams in the NHL, and they've had some games where they've erupted for 6, 7, 8 goals. But going through the grind of a tough schedule stretch, which they had after Christmas, 10 of 12 on the road and, a bunch of back-to-backs, the way you get points is by defending, right? So how have they defended? They've defended as a team, but what the Lightning have gotten, I think that some of these other teams that have had significant injuries maybe have not gotten to the same degree. They have had players fill roles and more than adequately. They've excelled in those roles, whether it's coming to the NHL or an expanded role in the NHL. And I'll give you 3 examples. One is Darren Radish, who basically became the Victor Hedman. If you're going to pull your top offensive defenseman off the roster, you can replace that player with somebody who's producing points at the same level that Victor did. J.J. Moser has essentially replaced Ryan McDonagh. You're pulling off your best defensive defenseman, and you plug in a guy who was on their team last year. But, I mean, we looked it up and this was before the Lightning had some crooked numbers against. They lost a lopsided game in Columbus, but it wasn't that long ago. J.J. Moser had only been on the ice for 19 even strength goals against, and like we were well past the halfway point. So it's not just that his plus minus is what it is, it's that he's just not getting scored on, right? And then the third, because you mentioned the third guy is a guy like Destu, who was 27. He's not 21. And it's like, can his game translate to the NHL game? And the answer is yes, it can. So they were able to slot him in. So you're withstanding these absences, but you're doing more than withstanding them. You're getting contributions from people who in some ways are doing more than just filling in. And Coop said this famously. You remember this, Greg, probably in November. He's like, we're not asking these guys to be Victor Hedman or Ryan McDonagh. We're asking Destu to be Destu. We're asking Moser to be Moser. It's just what they are providing is really, really valuable minutes at both ends of the ice. And the other thing I'll mention, this has been from the start of the year, they found an absolute treasure in Pontus Holmberg. I mean, Greg and I have talked about, like, we don't really understand what the Toronto Maple Leafs were thinking, but he's been the glue for probably the most surprising line. I would say it's the most surprising line in the NHL because Gord, Girgensons, and Holmberg drive the other team's top lines absolutely bananas because they cannot get the puck out of their own end. Offensive players want to go on offense, and Gord, Girgensons, and Holmberg, they just make them play in the defensive zone. That has been such a big part of why the Lightning have kept shots against down, chances against down, goals against down. And to me, in some ways, Holmberg is kind of the glue to that line because he's so strong in his skates and so strong in his stick. And I know you saw him a lot, Chris, the last few years in Toronto. But that was like a grand slam home run for the Lightning to bring this guy in and then have him mesh with those two other guys.
Yeah, I mean, with Holmberg, I know specifically the Leafs did have interest in bringing him back, but it was only at a certain number. And when his market got beyond that number, they let him walk, and they probably regret it if you've noticed where they're at in the standings.
That makes no sense, Chris. What number are we talking about here? I mean, the Lightning. I'm not saying Holmberg isn't worth the money, but I mean, we're not talking about like $6 million a year, right? I mean, I know GMs think about this, but all you had to do was qualify him, right? Yeah, like maybe it would have been a little bit more than what they wanted, but look, the Lightning would say thank you very much, right? But it's not like the Lightning signed him for, a cap busting deal. I mean, they got him at a fairly reasonable number, really.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I mean, that's
how we see it from our side.
Yeah, well, I'm not taking a side in it at all. I think it's just they felt that he was replaceable, and to be fair, the Leafs' bottom six hasn't been their issue. It's been some other things in their game, specifically their own defensive play as a team.
Anyway, Lightning fans have heard me go on and on about the Lightning, but hopefully that helps. If you decide to do a story on the Lightning, feel free to use whatever I said. But we were interested in, I'm going to ask you about the Olympics. So,
sure.
Are you going to Italy, by the way?
I'm not, but only because I've got a baby due in the next 2 weeks. So,
congratulations.
Priorities of life are keeping me from getting to Milan during the Olympics anyway.
All right, 30,000-foot view for the Olympics. It is clear the two deepest rosters are Canada and the U.S. in that they are having to say no to some players who would otherwise be deserving. I'm not sure the other countries are quite in the same boat. Is this their tournament to lose one or the other, or do you still see this as a fairly deep competitive tournament where countries other than Canada and the U.S. do have a legitimate path to winning, let's say, gold or silver?
I still think there's 3 or 4 other countries that could win. I mean, the nature of the tournament is such, you have to win 3 game 7s in a row to win, right? The quarterfinal, semifinal, the gold medal game. And, we've all just watched enough hockey to know some weird stuff can happen, right? A team that gets outplayed on any given night can win a game. And so I don't expect any of the other countries to dominate Canada or the U.S. in a given game, but I certainly think they can beat them. And, we shouldn't also ignore that, a team like Czechia, and that country's come on a lot in recent international play, almost half their roster plays in Europe, which, yes, on one hand, that means they're not known commodities to a lot of fans over here in North America. But the other side of it is that they play a lot together. They won a gold medal at the Men's Worlds 2 years ago in Prague on home ice, and they're going to have no body clock adjustment when they get to Milan. I mean, they're going to be traveling within Europe. And the first game of the tournament, they play Canada. Like, I could totally see them winning that game. And so a team like that, Finland is always a tough country when you get into these tournaments to be beaten and can win low-scoring games. Even Switzerland, which probably won't be on anyone's radar. I mean, if you tell me they have an upset or two in them, like they've been to a couple finals at the recent Men's Worlds as well. So yes, by no means is your premise wrong. Canada or the U.S. should win gold in this tournament, in my view. But I think that there is a path for someone to go on a run to maybe knock off one of those countries in a semifinal and then win the final. I mean, there's still a few countries that can win it, but it's probably most likely the gold medals coming back to North America.
Chris, I wanted to ask you about going back to the Lightning with the season they had and are having right now. We know Julian has taken some big swings at the trade deadline. On the surface, it would appear that the Lightning don't have many holes to address, but as you know, that hasn't prevented Julian from doing something pretty significant. What are you hearing on that front, and do you feel like that is something that Julian will do? And if he does do it, where would you go?
I could see him. I mean, the fact that you're talking about sort of an identity line that's already emerged. Like typically, that's where I would think that they'd be looking to add as another forward. And we've seen that over multiple trade deadlines with the Lightning. This might be the year they don't go crazy in that regard. And I also don't know that would be a mistake. I mean, it's fun to win trade deadline in some ways. It's fun to make a big move. I think it energizes the fan base, the locker room. It gets the media talking, but oftentimes the teams that take big swings at the deadline don't end up getting a lot back and give up a lot of assets for doing so. And so I would say if I'm handicapping it, and I don't know where everyone's going to end up health-wise, maybe they add some depth on the blue line. I think that would make some sense. But I don't have them right now as a team that I expect to, and I know this clip is going to haunt me because Julian has a way of kind of emerging from the shadows and making a big move from time to time. But this year, I have to say, I don't have them connected to any of the top players that are out there. I don't see them making that kind of move. And part of it is just the team's been so good. I think they're planning on getting healthier and having those be the additions. And then, you've learned about some of the depth in your organization that they can step in. So you feel good about that if you run into injuries down the line. And then on top of that, they just traded away so many first-round picks that it might not be the worst year to sit back and let other teams do that and bring what you have right now to the dance.
So the Eastern Conference has been crazy tight, and the Atlantic Division especially has been crazy tight. I think you can still make the argument that all 8 teams in the Atlantic feel like they have a path, even though Toronto has slumped here recently. Do you see this continuing through the trade deadline, and how much would that potentially affect the trade deadline if we legitimately have teams who are thinking, well, we really don't want to be a seller because we still have a path to the playoffs?
It's possible, and if that happens, it might make the deadline kind of weird. You might get some teams that even almost buy and sell at the same time because they're not necessarily committed to one path or the other, and so maybe they sort of do something closer to a hybrid. I don't recall a season like this. I can tell you right now, if you walked out my front door, you wouldn't find too many people on the street or at the market saying the Leafs have a path. But I say that knowing that they still have 4 games right now. They're on a road swing through Western Canada and through Seattle. That if they win 3 out of 4 of those games, they'll probably go into the Olympic break within 4 points, say, of a playoff spot. And I don't think management would view that as a position where they would be selling from. So there absolutely is a path for even the teams at the bottom, like Ottawa and Toronto, the Atlantic, if they get hot enough to maybe have their front offices not sell. And so we don't have very many sellers in the league right now. There's only 4 teams, in my view, that are in that spot clearly. We've already seen the Canucks and the Flames make some big trades. Obviously, the Rangers dealt Carson Soucy this week and are in the process of trying to deal Artemi Panarin. So they're a seller. I think St. Louis is clearly going to be a seller. Beyond that, I think there's only 4 true sellers as of this minute. And we're still a long way in terms of days to the trade deadline, but we're not a long way in terms of games for most teams. Most teams only have 8 or 9 or 10 games between now and the deadline. So there's not going to be a lot more feedback that the front offices get in terms of standings positions from their teams beyond this last 8, 9, 10 games. So it could be a year where we just don't have that many sellers. It might be a good time to be in the Rangers position or some of these other teams that are committed to selling a lot of assets, because I don't know that we're going to get a whole pile of them, especially in the East.
Chris, probably And my last question, the most difficult question that I'm going to ask you. When you talk about playing surface and ice surface, which one are you more confident in? Raymond James Stadium here in Tampa or in Italy for the Olympics?
The great question. I'm more confident in Raymond James Stadium just because I don't know the exact number. You guys might actually know it. We're somewhere about 50 outdoor games that the NHL's held.
Yeah.
And they've obviously done it at Dodger Stadium and, did one down in Miami at the Winter Classic. I just think the NHL has perfected this. They've dealt with rain. They've dealt with heat. They've dealt with basically anything that the elements might throw at you. Now, I know they're using a different sort of format by building that temporary structure on the ice to have it ready here in these next few days. But
yeah,
I got more faith in their people pulling it off than in Milan. That being said, in the interest of fairness, because I was there 2 weeks ago or 2.5 weeks ago, and it didn't look the best. I have actually spoke to someone this morning who was at the arena, Santa Giulia Arena in Milan, and he says it's night and day, the improvements they've made in the last few weeks. So it sounds like both ice surfaces are probably going to be playable, which is good news for hockey fans.
Last one for me, Chris, following up on that. Not a week ago, but maybe a month and a half ago, how high was the red alert button flashing in the league's office about, is this rink going to be ready? Are we going to be able to send our players there?
Yeah, it was like DEFCON 10 or whatever. It was, absolute concern. The league had personnel on the ground when I was there in the first weekend of January. So did the NHL Players Association. At that point, 11 of the 14 dressing rooms hadn't even been started to be built, let alone being finished. They've made huge work with some of those behind the scenes things. At that point, though, the boards were in place. There was ice. They played some test games with Italian professional teams. So I was reasonably confident that the surface itself, that they would have an arena to play the games, which, really, most of people are going to experience the Olympics through their TV sets or their smartphones or what have you. They're not going to actually be over in Italy watching the games. I still think the experience in arena might be a little bare bones, we'll call it, especially if you're used to some of the nicer rinks around the NHL circuit in terms of what you can expect with lounges and bars and concession stands and all those types of things. But they've raced this thing across the line. I know the players were willing to basically play anywhere to have this tournament. It's going to be a great spectacle, and I'll be enjoying it with my newborn baby here in the next few weeks.
That's awesome. Well, Chris, best of luck, and congratulations again. That is awesome.
Congratulations.
Growing that family, man. That's the best part about it.
Yeah,
we
I'm
appreciate.
pumped.
Yeah, you should be.
And
we
congrats
appreciate
on
you.
2,000 games, Mish. I can't believe you're even of an age where you can call that many. But I love the little video that went out the other day.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate it.
All right, sir. Thank you, Chris. We'll talk to you soon.
See you guys.
All right, there he goes. Chris Johnston. Good dude. Good
Yeah,
dude.
really good dude.
Comes on, willing.
He's really tied into the bloodstream of the NHL, isn't he?
Yeah.
Like, he's got his old school sources. By old school, I mean that's old school, to have your sources get information, if not from the first person source, maybe somebody who knows the first person source.
Right.
There are a few of those still floating around out there, and if you follow the NHL, you know who they are. If it's coming from them, it's got teeth to it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we always say that about Chris and Elliot, especially. Bob McKenzie was like that.
Yep.
For sure. And I think it's always valuable to have those guys in, particularly around the trade deadline, getting close to it in case there's some nuggets. Pierre LeBrun, also somebody who does that.
Yeah.
So very, very cool to have him on. Mytho says, Mack truck back and Hetty is skating. I hope the boys still keep their flow. Might take a couple of games to integrate, but we have looked so strong defensively all month. Really hoping we keep it up. I think everybody agrees.
Yeah, of course.
With that. Michelle says, I heard on SiriusXM today that Point was on the ice. Is that correct?
I did not see Braden Point on the ice, Michelle.
Sources.
It was an
sources.
optional. I saw Hedman on the ice.
Yeah.
I did not see Point.
Pierre LeBrun had something on Hetty today, or somebody had in The Athletic about Hedman coming back and, getting ready for the Olympics. And it was about Landeskog as well and how he's really trying to work his way back
Sure.
from Colorado, but, trying to make a statement that he's going to be ready, for the Olympics. Alan says, very excited about McDonagh returning. It will solidify an already rock-solid defense. And how about the possibility of actually snow for the Stadium Series game? We're going to get into that tomorrow a lot, correct?
Dennis Phillips will be joining us.
Yes.
The last time Tampa had snow, I don't even know when that was. It certainly was not when I was here. 77. I was alive. But
I was -3.
I remember I do remember a big snowstorm in 77.
Yeah.
I was living in New York City at the time as a little kid, and I remember the snow like packed up on the sidewalks, taller than me.
Yeah.
But
It's incredible.
I don't know if that was the same storm. Dennis can fill us in on all of that. So here's the thing I will say about the outdoor game, not for McDonagh, who's getting in a game tonight, but I did like a Q&A for some sponsors this morning with Brian Engblom and Dave Randorf. Julie Stewart-Binks hosted. And so she was asking questions of the three of us. And the question went to Brian about like the challenges or the kind of the excitement of playing in an outdoor game. And what Brian talked about was like, it is a completely different environment for these players. Now, many of them have played in an outdoor game before, but it is still really, really different. Like, I mean, yes, it'll be nighttime, right? Because I mean, I think we're dropping the puck. The sun will have set, so it's going to be dark. You're going to have stadium lights on, as opposed to the game in Nashville that was played, during the day, late afternoon. I think it was in Nashville, with natural light. But it's an open air stadium, right? The sight lines are going to be different. What you see in your periphery is going to be different. Pucks going in the air, it's going to be different. There's no ceiling. When you look up to try and find a puck, there's no ceiling there. You have to try and find the puck. So I wonder if that's even more challenging if that's your first game back. Really, I'm talking about Hedman here. That's your first game back after missing all of this time, and how much even more of a challenge that would be. Who knows? But that's kind of what Brian is thinking about. Like, it's not just playing the game, it's the environment in which you're playing the game. Not talking about like cold or hot, but just sight lines,
Sure.
peripheral vision, what's going on around you, all that.
Yeah. It's all valid. There's no doubt about that. Thomas says, how many minutes do you think Mac gets tonight? Who is he paired with?
He'll be paired with Chernak, and I'm actually going to look up how many minutes he got in his first game back the last time, which was that LA game. So his minutes in those three games, 1749 in game 1, 1934 in game 2, and then the St. Louis game, where the Lightning led every step of the way, 2016, 2016. So his minutes went up with each game. Now they were down in the LA game. I don't know if that affected his ice time at all.
Yeah.
But you could see that they worked his minutes up.
Yeah.
And then we hit the break, and then, he went back on the injured list. So, I mean, to answer that question, would I be surprised if he's in that 17-minute range again tonight? No, I would not be surprised. I think it'll be interesting because Chris is right. The top line for Winnipeg is their top line. So, look, you think about they added Jonathan Taves, who's 37 years old now and basically hadn't played since 2022.
Right.
Like, they didn't get quicker there. I mean, Taves never had blazing speed, but I mean, guy in his late 30s who hasn't played in a couple of years. He's really helped them on faceoffs. He's number 2 in the NHL on faceoffs, but
he was never a dynamic offensive player either.
And Nyquist is not a blazer. I get that. I get all of that. Having said that, their top line, and really their top line is 2 players and then a third guy, Mark Scheifele and Kyle Connor.
Really
the
good
third
players.
guy right now is Velarde.
Mm-hmm.
They had Iafallo on there. Like, they've had different guys play that third spot or be the third guy. That is a legit line. So the Lightning are the home team. They have last change. Are we going to see Chernak McDonagh against the Scheifele line, or are we going to see Moser Radish against the Scheifele line? We'll see. Normally we would say McDonagh Chernak, but McDonagh's coming back from injury, and Moser Radish have been doing the job. We're going to see the Gore line against that line, I'm pretty certain.
It's unusual in today's NHL to have a team who is not at least 2 lines deep.
Right. And I don't mean to give them short shrift. I mean, you do have other players. You have Nemestikov. You have Cole Perfetti's having a horrible year, though. I mean, he had scored some goals for them last year.
They have Koepke.
Well, I mean, Koepke's on a 2-game goal streak that matches a career high. So their top goal scorers are Scheifele 26, Connor 23, Velarde 20. There you go. The next closest guy in goals is the defenseman, Josh Morrissey. He's got 10. They don't have one other player in double-digit goals.
To put it simply, that's a problem.
That's a problem. But I think it's more about their defense. I mean, they were good offensively last year, but they were they were so far and away the best defensive team last year that I think that they would have more than 49 points after 52 games if they had been able to defend better.
Who's their back end? If you had to say their top 6 right now, off the top of your head, what you're looking at.
Well, so Morrissey is one of the best. He's in the Norris conversation.
He's an elite defenseman. He's an elite defenseman. He's an elite defenseman.
And I think that they're very, very high. I don't know. I think they're very high. They are very, very high in Dylan Sandberg, who's more of a defensive defenseman. Sure. But, I mean, he's only got 8 assists this year. He's -1. He's also missed some time. He's only played 36 games. So, I mean, I'm guessing here they're 60. You got Dylan DeMello, solid defenseman. Shen is now back in the lineup because they've had some injuries on defense. I think he's there. You got Morrissey. You got Dylan Sandberg. You got Logan Stanley, who's played nearly every game this year, although he's been a guy who's kind of been a 6-7 at points. I think he's kind of settled in as a regular guy. And then they have a prospect who's fairly new to the NHL. He's going to play tonight his 10th NHL game. His name is Elias Salamonson. So it is Elias. I checked. So, I mean, he's a 2nd-round pick, right-handed shot. Salamonson is going to be in.
I mean, it's not.
But I mean, he's a player learning the game. Their main guys have been Morrissey, Sandberg, DeMello.
So if I'm Winnipeg, and I'm looking at my season and the roster that we've just discussed, and the lack of options, really. I'm looking to trade veterans. Luke Schen's name I know has popped up. I mean, you're not, even if you get into the playoffs, which would be very hard to do, you're not going to do anything. There's not enough depth. Not enough depth. You need some horses. And I mean, you're basically a one-line team.
They are a one-line team right now.
I mean, that's hard to win games. Even in today's NHL, the teams who are at the bottom of the standings, you probably can come up with 2 lines. That's not going to cut it today. So I think that's just kind of where we are. Anthony says Jets lost all of their fast players on cheap deals, and it changed their whole game. Maybe.
So now I want to go back and we got to go back and look at the roster last year, which I'm going to do, and see who was on their team last year. Other than Ehlers.
So that's a big one.
Who was on
obviously.
their team? Who is no longer on their team? So I'm going to go to their
do they have Lowry? Did Lowry leave?
Lowry's still there.
He's still there?
All right, here are their top guys from last year's team, points. Kyle Connor, he's back. He's a tremendous player.
He's an elite
41
player.
goals.
Yeah,
so he had 41 goals last year. So
he's an elite player.
He's going to eclipse 30. I don't think he's going to get to 41 unless he gets really hot.
Right.
Mark Scheifele. Ehlers was 3rd.
Okay.
Fair enough. You're pulling him off. Josh Morrissey. This is the order of scoring points. Sure. 4th, Morrissey. 5th, Velarde. 6th, Cole Perfetti. He's back. 6th, Neil Pionk is on the team. He's injured. Nemestikov, Niederreiter, Lowry, Iafallo. All these guys are back. And then at 71 games played, 22 points, you got Mason Appleton, who went to Detroit.
Niederreiter is a sneaky good player.
Yeah, but I mean, all this talk about how slow they are.
Well, what are the players that Anthony's referring to that left?
One quick player is off their team.
Well, who else was playing last year that left? That's
what I'm saying.
From
I just
cheap
went
contracts.
I went through half of their roster here, and I'm taking off 2 guys. I'm taking off Ehlers and Appleton. After that, you got Dylan Sandberg. He's back. DeMello is back. Morgan Barron is back. Colin Miller was on their team last year. He's not. Logan Stanley.
Yeah.
And then you're really into the kind of the depth guys.
Interesting.
I mean, Hellebuck had he won the Hart Trophy last year.
Yeah, he had a great year. Incredible.
I remember talking with with the Winnipeg broadcasters, Paul Edmonds, I think, joined us maybe when the teams played in Tampa. The Lightning won the game in Tampa. They lost in Winnipeg last year. The Jets were on some crazy. Remember the Lightning had that stretch of 8 straight games of allowing 2 or less? I want to say the Jets were close to 30 consecutive games of allowing 2 or less. I mean, that is just
that's incredible.
Insanely good.
It's insane.
They've also been terrible in overtime, which has hurt them on the edges a little bit. They could have gotten more wins. They've lost 7 straight games in overtime of the shootout. But, I mean, look, we heard it from Chris. We heard it from Brian talking to the Utah people, right? And then this fan just wrote in that they are slower. So maybe it's not that they lost a bunch of fast guys. Maybe it's just that the guys that they have are a year older and a year slower. But I have a hard time believing if you're bringing back, and I'll just say basically the same team, that you would be that much worse defensively.
Incredible.
Maybe everything went right for them last year and everything is going wrong for them this year, and they're actually somewhere in between, right?
Let's dip into the metrics. What are the metrics telling us? That's all.
The metrics will probably tell us something, but ultimately it's about executing. Now, does this mean the Lightning are going to win tonight? No. I mean, I think if you're Winnipeg and you're like, we absolutely need to start pressing on the gas. We just had a win in New Jersey, which they did.
Sure.
We need to go on a run here before the Olympics. Like, they are going to bring, I would expect they're going to bring some urgency into the game tonight.
And this can be a weird game because you have the big one coming up on Sunday.
Yeah,
and so
I'm not going to put this in the Monday game category, though. I thought that Monday game was going to be, that was a very tough game. You want to say this is a little bit of a trap game? It shouldn't be a trap game for the Lightning. We're still more than 3 days away from the outdoor game, to me, anyway. If they lay an egg tonight, though, the Lightning will come on the show tomorrow and say, you know what, they laid an egg. Maybe they were looking ahead. Maybe Winnipeg just brought a higher compete because they have more urgency, because they absolutely need points. We'll see. That's why you play the games.
That's why you play the game.
Yes.
Logan says.
Famous quotes.
That's right. Logan says, Greg, I liked how you compared Stamkos to Radish. Obviously, they're not the same, but they're one-timers, can fool the goalie even more with no screen. Stamkos with his accuracy, Radish with his speed. And it also was more of just, where is the threat coming from? The one-timer. Yeah. The ability, because they've tried Radish in the Stamkos spot, and it wasn't the same. But the one-timer from where Radish is shooting now can act like that. And I think what I also have learned, you do not move around Kucherov on the power play. Look, we can move him on the left side, the left wall. That's fine. Keep him where he's comfortable, and you take the really good with the small percentage of the bad in terms of trying to force some passes. But I think that's just, let's not reinvent the wheel. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of how I would look at it. Chris says, don't have the actual stat in front of me, but I believe the Jets' losses for that long losing streak were all by 1 goal. So they aren't getting dominated. I expect a tough game tonight.
That is fair. I mean, they actually have a plus goal differential in, I think, the first and second periods. They have a bad goal differential in the third. That part is true. I remember looking at goal differential, and Winnipeg was near the bottom of the conference standings in the West, but their goal differential was minus, but it was better than some other teams that were ahead of them with a worse goal differential. But those count. Like, those do count. And those are very painful losses. When you're like 2-2 going into the third and you lose in regulation, we've talked about that on the Lightning side. Those are crucial, crucial losses.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, that's 100%. Chris says, I am a 100%er of both Power Lunch and Chris Johnston Show. Love the collab. Well,
very nice. Chris has been joining us for a few years. I mean, we don't get him on a lot, but when we do, it's always a good conversation.
I think you have to pace the national guys, too, because I think they're pulled in a lot of different directions, and I think that's just fair.
Yeah, no doubt.
Lord says, congrats, Mish, on 2000. Love hearing your voice on the radio. Question for the gang. Thoughts on potential snow on Sunday?
Well, that's a Dennis Phillips question.
That would be fun, though. Would that be? I mean, look, it would be conditions.
It wouldn't quite be Pittsburgh and Buffalo playing in Buffalo in that first one. With
Hey, you want an Iron
like
City?
a winter wonderland.
Hey, Mish, we can have a pierogi and an Iron
Well, it
City
wasn't played
cold
in
one?
Pittsburgh. It wasn't played in Pittsburgh. It was played, but that was where Crosby scored in the shootout, and the
That's true.
snowflakes are coming down. We're not gonna. I don't think even if we have snow, we're not gonna have that scene. But that
It would be kind of
something
cool.
else. Yeah,
It would
that
actually be kind of
something
cool to be
else.
outside and to see some flurries. And I mean, that's a moment. That's a cool
I
moment.
was talking. I was actually. My wife was talking to some friends of ours who are from West Virginia, but close to Pennsylvania, close to Pittsburgh, and they like the Penguins. So my wife was talking to her friend, the wife mother in this family unit, and she was like, I remember they had to push an outdoor game in Pittsburgh from the afternoon to the evening. And I said, I bet that's the Winter Classic where Crosby got hurt. Because I remember that game was played at night in Pittsburgh. David Steckel checked him in the head. And Crosby got a concussion. He came back, played against the Lightning a couple of days later, and Hedman
hit
gave
him.
a much less
And it wasn't
flagrant
a bad
check.
hit. Yeah.
But that one knocked him out
Right.
for the rest of the year. But that was the game. It was played at night because the weather was too warm on January. I mean, I think it was still January 1. The first few they always played on January 1. In fact, more than the first few. It's been recent they moved it away from January 1, but that would have been January 1, 2011, and it was too warm in Pittsburgh. They had to play it during the day, so they pushed it to the evening. I didn't know if you remembered that, but
I do. Yeah, I do.
that they pushed it. Yeah.
Yeah. Good memory,
That
though.
was at Heinz Field, right?
It was.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
That was a huge rivalry at the time, and it really extended Penguins Capitals.
No doubt.
Crosby, Ovechkin. I mean, that was like literally made for television, right?
It was.
Yeah.
It was was a really good rivalry. Chris says no trades can be made during the Olympic break, right?
Correct.
That is correct. This question from Dave says New Jersey probably doesn't see themselves as sellers, but they should for the sake of their fan base. They need to rattle the dice in the tumbler, so to speak.
So we didn't actually get to the Palat trade yesterday, and good for Palat. He had a goal in his first. It was a power play goal. He scored early in the game. He had an assist. Matthew Darsh knows what he's getting in Andre Palat. Palat, not in the room. I've read enough here, and I've talked to our friends on the New Jersey Devils broadcast team to know. And in fact, Matt Laughlin talked about Palat, I think, when we had him on earlier this year.
Yeah.
You know, how much he brings, even though the points aren't always coming. So Pally is, 34 now? I think he turns 35 this year. And the Devils gave him a 5-year contract. And I think, from what I've heard, a lot of fans of the Devils, the team wasn't doing as well as they had hoped this year, after they won 8 in a row to start, are zeroing in on what is his goal and point production, what is his contract. Okay? And they were not happy. They're like, this guy's overpaid. He's not worth the money. And that's the fans' right, the fans plural. Like, it's their right to say that. Like, if they believe it, they're fans. They can say what they want to say. I think that in the room, though, this had a ripple effect from what in not a good way. Like, Palat was very well respected in that room. And we know here how important that guy can be in a playoff game, in a playoff series, whether he's scoring or not. I think Matthew Darsh understands that too. So, I mean, the Islanders have had some injuries this year. I think a lot of them, I mean, the notable ones I think have been on D more than at forward, although they lost Palmieri. He's a right winger. You know, Palat's a left winger. But Palat will be a good piece to fit in there. And the Islanders aren't too concerned about, I mean, he's got a year left on his contract, but they're loading up for the stretch run here. And they will be a better team in the playoffs with Andre Palat than without Andre Palat, even if it's not the same Palat that we saw a few years ago.
It's a hard 34. He's played a lot of hard minutes.
He has.
You know, there's a lot of wear and tear on that body.
But they're not asking him to play with their equivalent of Point and Kucherov.
No, but it goes back to what we've talked about on this show. When you attack free agency, you always overpay. We've seen Barclay Goodrow. We've seen Andre Palat. Eventually, the key there is in the first couple of years, you sign that big contract and you're overpaying. If you're the team that's overpaying, you're trying to catch lightning in a bottle and win within the first couple of years of that long-term deal, because the back end of that contract ends up being bad. It just does. And it's not Palat's fault. It's not a Goodrow fault. It's not, name some of the guys who've signed big contracts who are older. You're not going to last long. Yanni Gourde is probably going to be another good example. He's playing really well right now. But Yanni Gourde signed, what was it, an 8-year contract?
6-year deal.
6-year deal. What's Yanni Gourde going to look like in 3 years? And so teams understand that, but don't be shocked when they move on and they don't get the results earlier in that deal, because then you've got to move on from it, because it does handicap your team just a little bit.
Can I just say one thing? And this is probably not unpopular. People aren't going to care whether it's popular or unpopular. It's my opinion.
Lightning broadcaster says.
A minority. I don't think a lot of fans look at it this way. I'm not sure that you look at it this way, because I've heard you talk about contracts and all of this. I think that sometimes I don't always draw a direct line between the dollar amount that a player is making and the production that player is providing in terms of something tangible, like goals, assists, points. The money is the money. You're building a team under a cap. Some players are going to get paid more. Some players are going to get paid less. That's just the way it goes. And GMs are trying to assign a number, dollar number and term number that matches what they think they're going to get from the player. But sometimes they're off a little bit.
Sure.
Okay. So Ryan Callahan, for example, the Lightning re-upped Ryan Callahan after they traded for him. He was on an expiring contract, but he re-upped. And did they probably, quote unquote, overpay? Yeah, because he had a lot of injury problems toward the end of that contract. He never finished the contract. He basically was traded to a team that could pay him the last year of his contract to take that off the books for the Lightning. But does that mean that Ryan Callahan wasn't valuable to the Lightning? If a fan is going to say, well, he wasn't worth 6 or what, I don't even remember what it was, 6.5. I feel Callahan was really worth 3 toward the end of that contract. Okay, so that's $3 million. Maybe you're getting production that's worth $3 million from another player who's being underpaid. So I tend not to really get caught up in the we're overpaying. Palat is making more than he's worth. That's really what they're saying. And I think that is a tricky argument to make sometimes, because it's not your money. It's the GM's decision to build his team. And maybe in order to get a Palat, you needed to, as you alluded to, throw a little bit more up front. But did that $5 million contract for Palat prevent the Devils from doing other things? That is probably the better question.
You'd have to ask
and
them
I
that.
have to believe the answer is no. The answer is no. The Devils were able to make other moves.
The Devils also probably thought they'd be in a better position now, and that's why they paid Palat, because they thought they were closer to winning. And sometimes that's a missing piece.
And in his first 3 years, prior to this year, they made the playoffs in 2. He was a big part of that first year. Yeah. Remember how good he was in the playoffs? They beat the Rangers. Second year was a disappointment. But last year they had a good year. They just ran into Carolina in the first round of the playoffs.
The numbers always, in any sport, I use the word overpay. You see it all the time with players. They're like, I'm not sure I'd give him that contract.
Right.
It doesn't mean there's not value. It's just, I think especially in a cap, you do have to be cognizant of the fact that, and look, when you're paying somebody in their 30s, giving them term and a decent amount per year, that's risky. And general managers will tell you that. So I don't blame the Devils for doing what they do. I can remember saying, that's an overpay. And when I say overpay, that's not going to look great towards the end. They're trying to win now, so maybe you have to look at that differently and say, we're trying to win now, $5 million for Palat, whatever the number was. For the first 2 years, fine. but understand, and they answered that question by trading him because they felt
Right.
like they couldn't keep it.
But clearly the Islanders do not feel that this is not money well spent.
The Islanders, maybe they feel like they're a piece or two. I don't know. Like, would I have made that trade? Hard for me to say. I think Palat has value. To answer your question, it just depends on what the price is. And that's the million-dollar question for a lot of these GMs when they start talking about free agency, and we're going to find out during the trade deadline.
Yeah.
You know, there's going to be some reaches. Some people think it's a reach. Other people won't. Who knows? But
I guess just to put a bow on it,
please do.
I said this, but I'll repeat it. To me, a contract that is an anchor is a contract that prevents the team from doing other stuff that they would like to do but can't because they have one or two contracts where, you know, they are quote-unquote overpaying. I don't think Palat was ever in the range of I mean, he wasn't making like $9-10 million a year, right? He was making half of that. So I think that, without knowing for certain what the Devils wanted to do, but that was not a contract that would have prohibited the Devils from doing other things that maybe they needed. Now, I'm going to use this as an example. I know we're running out of time here, but the Lightning needed to move Mikhail Sergachev to free up money to bring in Jake Gensel.
Yep.
That is completely different from the Palat situation, right? But it's very easy, and I understand it, for fans to be like, Andre Palat has however many goals this year. We're paying him $5 million a year. That's a waste of money. We're overpaying him. He's not worth the contract. Well, again, you know, is your team – how much better is your team going to be if that contract was $2 million? Like, whatever you feel he deserved, let's move it. Let's move that number down. You think Palat deserved $2 million a year? Okay, let's reduce it by $3 million. What are you going to do with that extra $3 million? How is your team going to be better? That's my question. So maybe you can use that $3 million in a productive way, but usually it's kind of on the edges, right? I think it's just the number. The number of fans are like, that number is too high for what our team is getting from this player. So look, that's every fan's right to be able to express that opinion. I look at it a little bit differently. Those are my 2 cents on it. Anyway.
Fair point. And I got to get a read in. Steve's going to yell at me. He wants me to get them in
Get
before.
that in.
Hey, tonight enjoy some Refrom. Smooth, versatile, now pouring at Benchmark International Arena. Order a tropical wave or a lighting meal and taste why fans are switching. Refrom is a premium craft Florida local rum built on authenticity, quality, and easy drinkability. Ask for Refrom by name. Go Bolts! Enjoy responsibly. Partner, we have a game tonight. I will see you there. And then tomorrow we are going to be live, breaking this game down and looking ahead to the Stadium Series. And, of course, Dennis Phillips will be joining us. So we'll get a weather update.
To it.
What more do you need? Listen to Power Lunch tomorrow, especially. Steve Ersnick, thank you. Chris Johnston, thank you for coming on.
Chris.
We do appreciate that. And for everybody who listened, thank you, guys. I am Greg Linnelli. You've been listening to Power Lunch on Lightning Radio.